the Richland County Finance and Personnel Committee to order. Was there proof of notification?
Posted, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And we have a 19-point agenda. Would you take a peek and tell me if you want to approve it? Thank you, Mr. Cooey. Seconded by?
I'll second.
And all those in favor of that 19-point agenda signify by saying aye.
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 Public comment. Where's my public? Okay, we'll move on. Previous minutes from our December meeting. This paper agenda I've got in front of me says December 30th, 2022. That's got to be a typo, right? I hope.
Yes, we should be just previous minutes.
Okay. Previous minutes. Have you reviewed those? Do you have any additions, corrections? If not, I will declare them okay as published. Reports, financial reports. Mr. Langrick, Fund 75, capital improvements.
Several reports today, Mr. Chair. The items that you'll see underneath items 5 and 6, or I'm sorry, underneath item 6.
You're not very loud, Clint.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Items underneath 6 today, we're looking for motion to accept financial reports. The following reports are presented for review of performance and discussion. You're going to see Fund 75, capital improvements. We're at 90% expended and looking to close out on March 5th of 2023. Again, this is the 2.9 million. Expenditure plans are defined through the policy that we approved on August 2nd through Finance and Personnel meeting. We've done some adjustments as well to that through Public Works on trying to accommodate for some courthouse projects. Looking to close out, the remaining will be appropriated to the Highway Fund on February 7th to complete the closeout. The reason that there's a closeout of March 5th on this is this was a non-taxed borrowing, bonding, and it is all kind of tabulated and audited in-house. So we're going to be showing expenditure out of that count by March 5th. It's then up for us to make sure that we're keeping all of our audited records and where all those monies went. So if we're ever questioned by it, that we can produce that. Fund 92 short-term borrowing for 2021, we're at 97% expended. And at 2022, we're at 20% expended, anticipating the transfer of the $650,000 to Highway Maintenance Fund in the same meeting tonight, which will take a big chunk out of 2022, and then looking to follow up with the departments to ensuring that we have all appropriations requested for the end of the year that were appropriately put towards Fund 92, and looking to see what types of overages that there might still be remaining there to tidy that up. Fund 93, our ARPA funds, we're at 23% expended. We do have a request for billing out to Sauk County in regarding to the airport improvement project. And in 2023, we'll be executing necessary fund transfer to supplement our operation expenditures. So we're looking to those major actions happening in that fund, as well as a final spend down on our ARPA funds that were distributed out for the child care and early education grants that were pushed out to the community. Administration office budget is also included in there. You'll see we're at 88% expended as of November 30th. The clerk's office budget was in there at 80% expended through November 30th. Some of the reason that one is a little bit less expended is there was a vacancy there for multiple months. And Treasurer's office, we're at 85% expended through November 30th, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions or comments? Okay. Did you cover childcare? Yes, you did. Okay. Are you ready to talk about budget performance then?
I was looking if it's looking for a motion to accept reports if you would like.
Oh, well, okay.
I would make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. Seconded by
I'll second.
Mr. Cooey. All those in favor of accepting the reports signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, Clint.
Okay, then we have the highway. One second here. lost the highway item, but I have it. Failed to get it into your folder, and I apologize. See if I can here.
The cover sheet is in our folder.
Is the cover sheet in there?
It is.
Where am I missing it? It
It's
should be-
06 instead of 07.
Oh, maybe that's why I'm not seeing it.
Transfer from Fund 92 to Highway, that one?
Yes, that's the one. Let me pull it back up. I just can't read. 06, there we go. Transfer from highway. There we go. Looking today for a motion to transfer $650,000 from Fund 92, that is your short-term borrowing fund, to Fund 71 for County Highway Fund to supplement highway funds for 2022 county trunk repairs and maintenance and improvement projects intended with a short-term borrowing. Background on this item is the 2022 major county trunk maintenance work was executed with intentions of these borrowed funds included the construction of the new sand and salt shed, as well as then County Road BR, which there was 3 miles of road maintenance executed with those funds. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, you've heard the request. What's your pleasure?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Cooey makes the motion to transfer the funds. Do I have a second?
I'll take it.
Mr. Williamson. Pretty straightforward. We planned for it this way. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We've transferred. Anything else, Mr. Langrick?
Not on that item, sir. If you'd like to move on to our contract for accounting services.
Yes, we can do that.
Number 8 in your packet folder, looking for motion today to approve contract extension with Johnson Block and Company to perform the 2022 county financial audit. Richland County has engaged with Johnson Block for the past several years in a review, audit, and reporting the Richland County financial position, compliance, and processes. It is recommended by the administrator that we extend contract with Johnson Block to conduct the 2022 audit preparation. Rules of authority, contracts over 10,000 required county board accepted if it's at a 1-year extension. I'm requesting finance and personnel consider this as a 1-year extension. The range of services is estimated to be from $31,600 to $34,750. Recommend entering for the 2022 audit with Johnson and Block, and would caveat that with if there is recommendations to put out requests for bids to engage with a different auditor moving forward, that's something that we can also comply with, but with all the irons that we currently have in the fire, recommend going forward with Johnson Block and then potentially engaging that for a 2023 audit. Mr. Chair.
The only problem I have with Johnson Block is Moylene's got get a little bit more exciting when he gives those reports via WebEx. But, you know, how exciting do you, I suppose maybe it's good not to be real exciting in your financial,
You
Okay.
can help the content, yeah.
do I have a motion to extend the contract? Thank you, Mr. Cooley. Seconded by
I'll second.
Sean Murphy Lopez. All those in favor of extending the contract signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have contract extended. Number 9, ambulance funds. Clint,
Mr.
or
Chair,
maybe Derek, Darren is on the line.
I will tee it up and then turn it over to Director Gudgeon. Looking today for a motion to approve a resolution for the county board to transfer $20,000 out of the ambulance's operating budget and into the new ambulance outlay account. The Joint Ambulance Committee approved a motion to transfer $40,000 out of the finance of Fund 51, the non-lapsing ambulance operations account, and put into Fund 16, which is the new ambulance outlay account. I will defer to Director Gudgeon, and if you can start off by kind of just explaining the discrepancy on the 20 versus 40, Director Gudgeon.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, Director
Okay.
Gudgeon is on the line.
So the discrepancy, Clint, comes from in 2021, I brought before Finance and Personnel to move $20,000 from Fund 51 to Fund 16 and just use that same template. So I apologize for not catching that. The amount that the Joint Ambulance Committee would like to move from Fund 51 to Fund 16 is indeed $40,000. The purpose of this move is to build up the outlay account that we have set, that we can set aside money for a new ambulance, or in the future, a new roof. I know that it's, many supervisors' goal is to, you know, the ambulance needs to be self-sustaining, and gives us the ability to move money from our operating budget to that outlay account. Um, Currently, Fund 51 has $274,000 in it, so it should be covered. Questions?
I have a question on, well, I've got you on the line, Darren. How's it going down there at the new garage? Are we getting close to moving ambulances over there?
We have one item left that needs to be installed. It's the monitoring system for the fire alarm and sprinkler system. And I'm hoping, but I'm not holding my breath, I guess, but I'm hoping that they will be there tomorrow to do that. And then that will meet all of the final things that the inspector wants to see before he signs off on complete occupancy.
Good. Now, do we have questions on the transfer of the $40,000? Okay, I'll accept the motion.
I'll make the motion.
Ms. Luck, seconded by Mr. Williamson, transferring 40,000 to the outlay fund. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We have the transfer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 10, discussion and possible action on referendum report and referendum question. And Sean, I caught about 15 minutes of your presentation this morning. What I heard was good, but I had to drive the bus, late start. But I'm going to call on Sean, I think, for this presentation.
Okay, yeah, well, glad you could hear 15 minutes of it. Been a long day. It's been maybe a long 7 months, I'd say, working on this too. But I think we have a final recommendation for the Finance and Personnel Committee this afternoon. So I sent it out in an email this afternoon. Not sure if everyone's caught that email.
I've been in a meeting since 3, so.
Yeah, so if you can just go to your email, it was sent out at
4:03
4:03 p.m. So actually Supervisor Caro and I were over at Kelly's Coffee, and he helped me work through some of the last few edits because we had 4 amendments made by the committee this morning to the report that was presented to them. So all those amendments were included, and that email at 4 p.m. is actually to the referendum committee, but all county board members were CC'd on it, all department heads, because I know a lot of department heads have been coming to our referendum committee meetings, and some members of the public as well. So
Sean,
yeah.
is it the email 4:04 p.m. from you, referendum committee agenda?
Yes. Yep.
That one? Okay.
There should be 6 attachments. The first one says final referendum report.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gonna follow the chain. Thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
right at the bottom. And then there's 5 appendices. So it goes appendix A, B, C, D, and E. So I think what I'll do, if it's okay, if I'll just walk through the final referendum report, and then if we need to go to the appendices, we can. And just stop me and Steve jump in or Dave jump in, because they're both on the referendum committee. So page 3 is an executive summary. So the main headline here is we've decided against recommending a referendum question to be included on the April 3rd, 2023 ballot. So I'll go into why that is. The main 3 points that, after going through this entire process that we have in this executive summary, are, we think due to a lot of those voluntary reductions that were made in all these committees and departments, and there's a chart later on with that, and we'll go through what those voluntary reductions are. We believe that the remaining budget shortfalls, or the reductions that need to be made, can be covered by shifting operating expenses to the short-term borrowing levy. And I'll go through what those are as well. But we basically are covered through the year 2026, which is this current budget year, which we were already taken care of. There was no issue there. But 24, 25, and 26, those 3 years can be covered with that action. Most of 2027 can be covered with that action, but not all of it. So I'll go through all that as we go through here.
Can I ask a
Second-
question?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So does that mean that all of our short-term borrowing will be to cover those things we talked about, which would be the 3, which was whatever, but it won't be any of our capital projects that we have on the horizon?
Correct. What we are talking about is there is about $1.7 million in our operating levy. Our operating levy is about 6.5 million right now. There's about 1.7 million in there that we think is eligible for short-term borrowing. And so by shifting those
Adult placements and whatever the other,
it's mainly highway department, asphalt, and equipment projects. That makes up about 1 million of it.
okay, Yep.
Court-ordered adult placements makes up 400 grand, and insurance makes
that's
up
right, the insurance, okay.
a little less than 300 grand. So that's how we get to the 1.7 million. Then if you look under item number 1 on the executive summary, there are areas listed here: the Sheriff's Department, Register and Probate, Simons, Family Court, Treatment Court, Emergency Management, Mental Health Therapy, Coroner, UW Extension, Veterans, and Nutrition Program. All of those can also be covered. By shifting that money out of the operating levy, we can cover those budget reductions that were identified but never covered. They were not
Okay.
voluntarily covered.
Okay,
Can I keep going? Okay. The major recommendation number 2 is that we adopt the 5-year financial plan as an official planning document of the county with a shared common goal of financial accountability. So we think that that plan should be more widely utilized by all of us, other elected officials, department heads, as a tool to balance priorities, monitor commitments, increase revenues, decrease expenses, and plan for changes to the property tax levy. And then the third thing, this is kind of a new thing that was just discussed this morning. You know, Steve and I were even debating it later at Kelly's Coffee. Should we include this or not? But shifting the development of a referendum question to the Public Safety Standing Committee to address the long-standing issue of the 911 dispatch center being within the confines of the jail. So through our research, we found a resolution from Forest County where they added staff into their sheriff's department to deal with this. They did largely not build a whole new building. They did some remodeling to make that happen, but they didn't like build a whole new jail to make that happen. They mostly did it through the operating levy, and they asked voters to add 6 staff members in their sheriff's department. And we have a lot of data in our research about how our staffing levels in our sheriff's department look compared to how some peer counties look. And we're a little low, I would say, overall. So we're not really low, but I think if we added some staff members to separate that out, we'd be kind of in the middle of our peers. So I think that's why we're recommending that. And I'll go into each of these in more detail, but that's like the big headline of all of this in case you.
Mr.
Fall
Murphy,
asleep.
how many employees do we need to adequately staff a 911 center?
So he was sitting there earlier, he's online, but I asked him that question yesterday when I was working on this. And I just said, can you just give me a rough estimate? Because in Forest County, they added 6 at a cost of a little under $500,000 each.
That's what I would guess, 6.
Iowa County did the same thing. They added 6.
3 8-hour shifts.
I think Iowa County went to 12s.
You can explain that later.
Well, we're not recommending specifics there. We're only recommending that responsibility be shifted to the Public Safety Standing Committee because we did not look into detail on that. So, no, we had plenty of other stuff to keep us busy as you'll see here. On page 4 of the report, there's a draft resolution for you all to consider, or for us to consider going to the county board, I should say. And it's just going to capture a lot of this stuff I'm going to go through here. So it's mainly intended as a summary of all of this. If you go to page 5 at the bottom, this is the main legal setup that we have to deal with that all of us have been learning on this board. that we know that the state will not allow us to raise our operating levy at a rate faster than net new construction. That's a little less than 1% a year in Richland County. So we know we have that restriction on us. The second restriction we have, and that's in the constitution of the state, that we can raise the debt levy at the rate we choose, as long as we stay below 5% of all of our value of property in the county. So we got a little information on both of those. If you go to the top of page 6, you can see what we've been doing over the past 9 years or so. In blue, this is the operating levy, and this is the issue we have. We cannot say give raises, deal with health insurance increases. We can't fund new positions. We can't really do anything because the operating levy keeps us at our, 2014 levels, basically. The orange, that shows our debt levy as it's increased. So between 17 and 18, that's when we borrowed for the nursing home. Between 20 and 21, that's when we started the short-term borrowing. And that's when we did our notes, a 5-year note to start a capital improvement program. We did both of those in 1 year. So that's what it looks like today. And then our debt, where are we at with that 5% number? Well, I guess we're probably at about 2% of our value in existing debt. So we're, we've used 35% of our debt capacity roughly on an annual basis right now. This is where we were a year ago. So page 7 describes.
Show it again. Back in short-term borrowing, where that would be.
No, but Steve wanted me to. This Steve, Carol wanted me to.
But we've got some other graphs coming up, which will kind of give it part of that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll give you some of those numbers. Maybe not packaged in the perfect present you'd like, but they're close, I hope. So on the top of page 7, how the recommendation was developed, we had 10 meetings for the last 6 or 7 months. We were charged with developing a question. We started the process with a press release, then we did research. We simultaneously started having correspondence with committees and departments. And then finally, we made a decision against recommending a question by reviewing those voluntary reductions by committees and using the results of that survey that you all took in December to come up with a solution. So the press release is in Appendix A, that's attached to the email. Appendix B has all the research we did, and all these bullet points, this is just a summary of Appendix B. Appendix B is it's maybe overwhelming, but in one sense, because there's more information, but it's less overwhelming because it's mostly charts. So if you don't like reading a lot of words, you can go there and look at charts. But we did all sorts of research on the county's budget. We had frequently asked questions. So we kind of dealt with, the Public Safety Committee, they want to know more about the Highway Department, asking about the campus. And so we would just deal with all those questions as they came in, and we added those to our research. Comparisons to other counties. You might remember this was a big deal last summer. We delayed some action until we could get some work done. We didn't have the wages with peer counties or the staffing levels by department with peer counties researched, but back in August, but we did that in the fall. So there's information on that in the research. And then, of course, Mr. Langrecht's 5-year financial plan. Some analysis was done on that as well. So the communication that we did with committees and departments, each of you were, a part of that on your respective committees. Each resolution that we passed back in August, the county board, we had to have a detailed report. There was some back and forth with each committee. So as committees submitted the reports to finance and personnel and we received those, we responded with follow-up questions then. And that's what resulted in these voluntary reductions that you can see on the top of page 9. So the total bar graph for each of these sections is what the reduction that the county board identified in the August resolutions. In orange, that shows what each committee voluntarily reduced. So you can see the biggest reductions came from Pine Valley Community Village. They covered their entire $445,000. That gets them up to 750 grand, which is half of their mortgage payments. And that was our goal in our resolution. So they might have seen the news story on that. I think they're going to be hiring migrants to fill in a lot of their vacancies they've been having a hard time filling. Health and Human Services, that was the second biggest reduction. A big part of that came from they're going to be reducing 5 employees over the coming years. There are several other reductions that they recommended as well. Just to put this in perspective, they have a $2.4 million property tax levy. We asked them to reduce by $1 million. They came up with 400 grand. So we still have 600 grand on the table. So those are the two biggest, but you can see it was all the way down to the fairgrounds. They're planning on covering their entire levy with some changes they're going to make. So it's just all over the place. And we couldn't have done this without those voluntary reductions. And maybe sometimes they didn't feel totally voluntary. I understand that. But in the end, we called them voluntary. So. The county board survey on the bottom of page 9, this should be pretty familiar to you all, but I don't know if everyone's seen the results yet. So at the top of page 10, when we averaged all of the county board member responses, by the way, all 21 people responded. So we know what each person is okay with a property tax levy increase, but those were all averaged, and that came to 4.5%. So you can see between the current budget year and 2027, if we do a 4.5% property tax increase every year, that comes to just a little over $2 million. And that figure will be important as we go through this. So just keep that $2 million figure in mind. And by the way, if you want to see the detailed results of the county board survey, it's one of those appendices. I'm not sure which one in your email. And I'm sure Ms. Dole has all the paper copies if we want to verify anything in her office. We also asked county board members to prioritize services. That's at the bottom of page 9, and then bottom of page 10. At the top of page 11, you can see how things were ranked. Highlighted in blue, these are those items that are eligible for short-term. Okay, so then the bottom of page 11, this is where it gets into more of the solution, the details of it. So thanks to the research that Mr. Langreck did and our corporation counsel, and I believe Health and Human Services, a combination of all those, we know that state statutes allow us to borrow for those 3 items we talked about. It's about $1.7 million that can be shifted. So from the 5-year financial plan, and this is a little screenshot, this one with a lot of red. So if you go a little bit further, let's see, to the bottom of page 11. So these are the items, and these are the forecasted. How do I explain all this, Mr. Langreck? Section 7 is the
Section 7 in the financial plan was all the addition options. I think we kind of called them levers in which we can kind of try to control the expenditures or revenues to try to fill that gap. Underneath that section, you're finding like the input of ARPA funds. You see other elements in there that were brought up that were not considered, like accelerated timber cuttings and all these different things that we talked about as placeholders so that we don't forget them as we move forward. And underneath that then was the section on our moving operational expenditures into short-term borrowing, which can go against your debt levy versus operational levy bucket. Did that explain it, Supervisor Murphy-Lopez?
Yeah, thank you. So if you go to Appendix D, 5-year financial plan, all those things he was just talking about, there's a lot of detail in here. And we're recommending that people start to get more familiar with this because this is the main accountability tool we've got now. So if one department made a commitment for a volunteer reduction in 2027, in order to see what the 24, 25, 26 amounts are, you have to go to this spreadsheet. And you can do a quick search function on your iPads. There's a little magnifying glass. You want to see Pine Valley, just type in Pine Valley. You want to see, did we keep our funds for Southwest Regional Planning Commission? You can type in the word commission. That row will pop up. Anything you're interested about, where did it end up, you can go there. What I did is I took a screenshot from page 10 which is the very bottom of the planning document. And it basically sums everything up and it tells us whether or not we have a balanced budget in each year. So under section 7, where it says estimated existing annual gaps with proposed adjustments, in the current budget year, we have $30,000 extra. In the 24 budget year, we are short $32,000. But keep in mind, this is a $36 million budget. So if you're getting roughly close to zero, that's what you need. You know, you don't need to be on the nose, you know, in a forecast like this, but you should be relatively close. So it's not until 2027 that we develop a more significant gap. And the way we were able to mostly balance the budget is by, in those red areas, which is on our screen. In 24, we're recommending shifting $420,000 of the highway department's operating budget to short-term borrowing. That's what got us to a relatively balanced budget. In 2025, we have to increase that amount to $800,000. And that gets us a relatively balanced budget, pretty close. Same thing with 26. We have to make a bigger jump that year because we run out of ARPA funding. And you can find that earlier in the document. But that year we have to borrow 1.6 million in short-term borrowing to get a relatively balanced budget. It's that next year that we hit that cap of 1.7 million, where we're going to need to be working over the coming years to kind of prepare for that. So I'll run through some examples of how we could, you know, just some quick ideas in the report about how we could do that. But that's the overview of how we're solving the financial problem.
I would just add that because it's 2027 where we see the gap, it wouldn't make sense to do a referendum now because that's too far in the future to really know for sure. So that's why that's that way.
And then at the top of page 12, this is probably the chart that will answer Supervisor Williamson's question the best. So here we took that chart from earlier showing what's happened between 14 and 22, and then we start projecting what's going to happen over the next 5 years. So in orange at the bottom on the right, our operating levy, it increases a hair every year. We did calculate that in. We have those numbers in the 5-year plan, and so we just pulled them into this. The yellow, which is the debt levy that we're kind of already committed to, you could say, that includes a radio tower project, and it acts as if we keep doing that 1.05 million in short-term borrowing every year. And then it's all of our other commitments, Pine Valley, all the notes we've taken out for, you know, campus roofs, for squad cars, whatever it is. So that's what's in yellow. It's the green, that's our change. That's what we're recommending. So that's what would happen to the tax levy if this committee goes along with this and if the county board goes along with it. It's a projection and it can be changed. It's every year it can be changed, but this is a plan. It's a forecast. If people generally agree with it, it sets some level of expectation. So you can see the percent increases. So next year there would be a 3.9% increase if all things stay the same, which they won't. We know things will change. We know sales tax will change, interest income, you know, we know a lot will change. But we figured out a lot of what should be in there too. 25, it'll go up 3.7%. 26, that's when that bigger jump is for 7.3%. And in 27, we can only go up 0.9% if nothing else changes. So then below that chart, there's some ideas about how can we start to address that 27 issue in the coming years. These are just some ideas, you know, that have come out. They're not meant to be the only ideas, but Simon's Recreation, I heard they talked about adding classes to increase their revenues or increasing fees to reduce the impact to our tax levy. We know the Health and Human Services Department has more staff than typical counties our size. And that includes getting rid of the capital consortium staff that aren't assigned to Richland County, even though they work here. So through this process, we reduced their authorized staff from 75 to 69. The county board did that last month. They've got 9 staff who help with the economic support, the capital consortium. That gets us down to 60. They're going to be volunteering 5 to take away over the next few years. That gets them down to 55. And our peer counties have 40 to 50. So we're getting toward that more in the range, but that could be an additional way to, but they oftentimes bring in a lot of extra revenue. So you can't just cut the staff and think you're going to get all the savings. You know, you have to be mindful of that. State highway aids have been flat for the past 20, 30 years. State's not been giving us more there, so we could advocate for more state highway aids. Pine Valley, maybe they'll do better than we think. Maybe the housing development will go off quicker than what we would hope for, and we would get more revenues there. But the overall point is we just need to use this 5-year financial plan. I think more department heads, more county board members, just more people need to be using it and always referring to it and looking for items in there to see what's, you know, buried's a bad word, but there's so much information that it feels like that sometimes. So I think we just have to use, I got really familiar with it over the past few months, and Clint has helped me with it, and we've worked together. I've been looking in there, and if it's good for more of us to be looking to make sure there aren't mistakes and things missed.
Sean, I have a question. The short-term borrowing that we see for the years 24, 25, 27, that is in addition to our usual 1.3 million. Is that correct?
Yes, it's correct, but 1.05 million is our current.
1.05.
So it's like, yeah, in let's see, in 0.05 million, is that $50,000?
Yeah,
Correct.
Okay, so like in 2024, it would be $1,470,000 is what our total short-term borrowing would be. Plus interest, of course.
So then at the end of it, it's 2.7 million in short-term borrowing in 27.
Exactly.
And someone brought this up, but the short-term borrowing, because it's paid off in a short term, isn't really counted against our total indebtedness by the survey, whoever does the surveying of that.
Jump on that one. So but
By
for
Moody's,
Moody's, it's not, shouldn't impact as long as it's still in the capital type of realm. But for our limit on state statute of how much you can impose if you're creeping up to that 5% of your total valuated money, then yes, but thankfully we're still
does
a
count.
ways away from that.
Because even though we're looking at short-term borrowing as a way to avoid adding to the levy for operational expense, we are still adding to the levy for indebtedness.
Yes, you have to look at it that way. Yeah, like.
Well, I'm
if you-
looking at it as a taxpayer.
Yep, at the bottom of page 6, our existing debt, this does not include the radio tower project. Looking at the date here, it says December 31st, 2021. We have not borrowed for that yet. It's not on here. It is in the projections in that other chart. It's not in this. It's not in this pie chart. But so yeah, you have to think about by 2027, like Mark was saying, we'd add 2 million. So right now it says 23.8 million. Will it be 25.8 million plus your 8? Is it 8 million for the radio tower project?
8 point.
Yeah, 8
Five.
something.
Mhm.
So yeah, you're talking 33 million. You know, so then so I would imagine you're getting closer to 50% by that point when you add all that in.
So can I ask a question?
That seems better than the ratio from 2 years ago. Is that correct, Melissa? I know
Of
you were
debt
tracking
ratio?
that pretty closely.
Yeah, I mean, as far as comparing around the state or just in
Well,
general?
just the 50% level,
When we began in short-term notes, and that was the same time we had the impact of about the 2.9, we were approaching about a 50%, but because we've been paying off principal and interest each year, it's come down, as well as your equalized value has grown. Your house total
Right.
property value is
So
going up, especially with inflationary type of.
so the percentage is actually looking better than it had been.
So can I ask him a question?
No.
Are you ready with
Mr.
your
Chair.
referendum question?
It is a referendum question. Well, no, it's not a referendum question.
Yours.
So that assumes that we want to keep doing the 1,050,000 for our current projects. We could decide to not do some of that and then lower the impact on our taxpayers, correct? Okay. I mean,
It's
right
a
now,
yearly- It's an annual decision.
It's an annual,
and you
yeah.
need 3/4 of the
Right.
county board members to vote for it. to
Right.
make it
I mean,
happen.
unfortunately, we have transferred things from our operations, like squad cars, used to be in the sheriff's budget, and now it's transferred to the short-term borrowing. So there's commitments there that we probably have to keep maintaining, but I was just curious if that, I'm assuming that is also an option at some point.
Couple questions,
Go ahead.
Sean. First question, as I remember going through the individual committees when we were kind of deciding or weighing in on items that we wanted to volunteer for reductions, there was kind of a twofold conversation. It was the, yes, we truly volunteer these as reductions. There's a better way to do this. And then there was the, we're submitting something to get to a number, but we hope the referendum comes back to us favorably. I see that there are items that we think that we can fund now with this strategy, assuming that there's many others that are still voluntary reductions. Is there a crosswalk between those two items, or was there decisions made which items would remain and which would be funded? I'm struggling with that.
Well, we just took all the voluntary reductions and we, well, Clint did this. I checked his work, but we just put them in the 5-year financial plan. All the voluntary reductions are there. So we are balancing the budget by implementing those voluntary reductions. The non-voluntary reductions, with 2 exceptions, and they are in the HHS department, they were all pulled out of the 5-year financial plan, and the way that those could be, the list of those, or the areas, they're on your county board survey that you took. So that's where those came from.
So that list on the survey for the items, special items, if you will, for consideration. Okay, that makes sense.
So all except the very bottom 2, when you look at the ranking, the HHS ones, the transportation program and the technology budget. We did, in these calculations, they ranked so low with it, and I don't know if this is the right decision, but we haven't talked about it. We didn't talk about it this morning, so that's why I feel like I should bring it up right now, because I think someone's going to ask about it. They are not included. How do I say this? I don't know about that one. I think we need to sort those bottom 2 out. I can't remember what I did there. It's been a long day, so.
Sure. Question 1A then, I guess, anecdotally, do we know, have the department heads had any feedback on this pivot yet, or is this kind of the first stop for this?
Okay, so on December 22nd, I submitted a draft report to the committee, and it had a pretty drastically different recommendation, and that was to go to referendum. I don't want to get into, well, I can get into as much detail as you all want, but what I did is I took those middle items from the survey, so everything below register and probate, and that started with Simon's Recreation, and all the way down to the nutrition program. And those were written into the draft referendum question, and there was $1 million figure put with those. Well, after we had that meeting, and I had time over the holidays to calculate numbers and other resolutions from other counties and start to actually check to see how they wrote their resolutions that went along with their questions, I realized with Forest County, the ones who did the 911 dispatch center question, that they actually said, this is what we want and this is the dollar amount. And so then I went back to those middle survey things and I added them up, the middle items from our county board survey, I added the dollar figures up and it came to a little over 300 grand. And I realized that the way the question was written, if it failed, it just didn't, there wasn't enough there to cut with the $1 million that we were asking for. So then I went back to look at the short-term borrowing amount, and I realized we had enough room in that short-term borrowing to cover those middle items in the survey. I don't know why I started going down that path, but that was part of the story of how the department heads. So we sent, and you all received this email too. We asked all the department heads, all county board members to review that draft report. And if they have any questions or comments, to let us know. Well, Ms. Clements from the HHS department was the only one who responded with some concerns or some issues. She corrected several things. One example was the 5 staff members. They were in our survey from HHS and we all ranked that, but that was actually a voluntary reduction. And so that was inadvertently put into the survey. So that was one change we made. There might have been some other things she mentioned too, but that was the main response we got when we issued that draft report right before Christmas.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Second question, and you referenced it a little bit earlier. We're still liable to a 3/4 vote annually to affect this 5-year plan, correct?
Each year, yes.
So I guess just anecdotally, or maybe a rhetorical question to the board would be, we have elections every 2 years. If a new group comes in and says, hey, this is not the direction that I want to go, or the public is upset with our decision to kind of circumvent a referendum and borrow more with capital, are we hamstrung deciding not to go to referendum at all with anything now, knowing that we could get a couple years into this plan and be dead in the water?
Yeah, I think part of the struggle with this whole idea of going to a referendum is if we go to a referendum and it fails, then will we follow through with the cuts? Knowing all of this, knowing what we know now that we can make the tax increase ourselves, I have a hard time, I could be wrong, I just have a hard time seeing the county board cut all those things in the middle of the survey and more, and not do this. Because there'd have to be pretty severe cuts into all the way into the sheriff's department to accomplish this. So everything we ranked on our priority list, we'd have to cut right up into our #1 priority. So I just have a hard time believing that the county board would do that. So now you're right. Several of us could decide not to run again. We could be voted out because we're gonna say commit to doing some of these tax increases. And then it's up to a new county board, whoever's on that county board, to deal with, well, then what cuts are they gonna make? We've prioritized ourselves as a county board. What cuts would we make should we be put into that position? So we have them ranked out. It's kind of nice. It's a guide. If, say, one of our votes fails, well, then we go right back to that survey and we start cutting from the bottom up. We know the priorities of the county board.
The question would be, sorry to interject, that a couple years in, would that still be the priority though?
I think that's just the nature. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I mean, I
Looks like-
think that's the nature of, it's every 2 years.
I know.
I mean, every county board
yeah.
struggles with at any time. I mean, that's one of the huge hamstrings of county government is every 2 years, it can be a completely different group of people.
Well, it hamstrings or it injects new life. New
Right? I mean,
vitality.
it could look both ways, but yeah, I mean, I think
it-
that's just, we don't know what's going to happen. So we just need to make a decision for what works now for this group with the information we have at hand.
I agree. And I understand I'm asking impossible questions, just getting it out there for consideration.
If I can make a comment, Mr. Chair, I think it's procedurally how I would see it working is that this conversation isn't going to stop in twofold. One is that we're going to be looking to review that 5-year plan annually and continually. So, the discussion on when you arrive at that 3/4 vote, presumably in August, it should be an education enough to understand with that vote, you know, what's going to have to come off the table each year with the 3/4 vote. It's not going to arrive at, we decide we don't want to do this. And then we try to figure out from August to October of how we're going to make up a $2 million gap thing. That would be not a wise thing. So when we hit those votes in August, it should be understood what that 3/4 votes kind of means is how I would visualize that. Does that make sense?
It does, but the plan is progressive.
Mhm.
So action that we could have took in year 1 and 2, and I'll stop after this, I promise. Action that we could have took in year 1 and 2, knowing that those were our only 2 years, have already expired. You know, so it's a progressive plan based on a landing point that we want to get to in 5 years. Would be my only comment.
I would agree. You're losing that time to make more significant adjustments as you approach the next wall.
One example that I think is being discussed about at the state level right now is an increase in state shared revenues. Say that by some miracle, they increase our shared revenues by 40%. That would put us at 1.5 million instead of 1.1 million, which is what we're getting right now every year. That would cover the short-term borrowing. We could make the decision in, August, we could say, well, you know what, the state gave us 400 grand extra. Let's just use that and not raise the taxes at all this year. We'll use that increase. Or we could say, it's time we separated the jailers out from the dispatch. Let's use that 400 grand to add 6 staff to the sheriff's department. And then we're going to add this tax increase too. We could have that debate at that point, but you're going to have to, as all these new figures come in, sales tax and, health insurance, whatever, you're going to have to readjust the 5-year financial plan. But at least we can now protect what our.
Can you hear me? Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I apologize. I had trouble connecting.
You're connected. Do you have a question? I don't know if you're connected anymore. Okay, are you done, Sean, with that presentation?
Done, unless you all want anything else. And then I'm done with the referendum. On vacation.
My personal thanks, and I'm sure the members of the Finance Committee share this. Thank you for all that work, and the members of your committee. I think we know more about our budget and our 5-year plan than at any time that I've been on this board. So I thank you for that. And
welcome. I learned a lot, and yeah, we had a great committee too.
Great committee, yeah.
A lot different than where we were a year.
So I'm not sure. I guess we can make a motion here to accept the plan and the recommendation of ad hoc committee. Did you write that in the form of a resolution or board action? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's on page 4, and then it goes a little bit into page 5 too. There's a resolution drafted there.
Okay.
Just one question. So when we talk about, what do we figure right now? $90 per 100,000, Clint?
That has changed, and I do apologize. In my recent conversation with Carol, we were using 90 when we first started engaging in it about 3 years ago. Because of the increase in equalized value with inflationary factors. It's probably closer to like $65 now on 100,000 for a millage impact.
For the million that we borrow right now. So
Correct.
we could, instead of going up to 200 per 100,000, say things stay the way they were, we'd be at about 120,000 per 100,000. 130, somewhere in there. So you see where I'm going. The number is important to people that have property, right? So if I got $1 million worth of property, you know what I mean?
That's what they want to know.
I want to know what that's going to cost me a year, and that's important to know that. Now that number moves, right, as things get better and worse, but it's important to know that just in case someone, if we're down around 60, that's pretty good, because when we started it was 90, if I remember right, or almost 100.
Yeah, we're around a 90 factor now. It's closer to a 65, but again, that Has to do with the ratio of what your
Exactly,
equalized value
exactly.
is.
And it's just something to keep in your mind. Somebody comes up and asks you, well, what's this gonna cost if we go to $2 million? Well, this is what it's gonna cost. And they can put it into perspective a little bit there, and then they can go yes or no, or be happy or sad.
I figure it a different way, but I'm not very good at figuring it your way, but I would like to understand that better. I always think because our property is roughly equal up to $100,000, I always think about, we're about 40%, but it's different in everyone's area, depending on which taxing districts you're in. Me and Steve were just talking about this over lunch. You know, in some areas, your county taxes might be 20% of your taxes. In other areas, it might be 60. It's all over the place. And what we're saying is we want to raise the county portion of your property taxes by 20% over the, not quite, but almost over the next 5 years. You know, it's about 4.5% a year. So you take whatever that tax is on your county portion and take it times that percent. But I understand why you're figuring it like that. We didn't do that, and I don't know how to do that myself.
The only reason why I figured like, because you get the school taxes, you get all that other stuff that's in there that we're not affecting that, right? You know what I mean? But when they say that, okay, you do short-term borrowing and you borrow $1 million, how much does that cost me per 100,000? That's why I look at it like that, because it's a quick number that just says, okay, it's going to cost you own $100,000 worth of property or whatever the case may be. It's going to cost you 70 more bucks. Okay, I can live with 70 more dollars. You know what I mean? When you look at it at a number like that, you start talking percentages, and some people are really good with percentages and some people aren't. And that's where it gets confusing. You say 40% increase. Well, so you're telling me my taxes are going to go up 40%? And then, you know what I mean? It can take you down a different place. And fortunately or unfortunately, school districts can make a lot of movement in tax levy every year, your property taxes every year. And I think everybody sees that. So just making sure that I guess this is the easiest way for me to explain it when someone comes and asks me. That's the way I look at it. And hats off, I gotta say, hats off for what you guys done. And I do agree with doing it this way, because I don't think we're ready to go to referendum yet. For the main reason I don't think we're ready is because I think we need to get out a few more years. Now, mind you, we may not be on this board, right? I get that, but I think it's good groundwork to get to that point, because it's going to turn to that if the state doesn't help or something doesn't help, or we don't see a bunch of growth.
Mr. Carroll?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, kind of along that same line, when we were able to have the county administrator from Washington County talk to us a little bit and give his experience with referendums. They did a referendum that failed, and he was also involved earlier in his career with a referendum that did pass. And one of the key takeaways from his discussion is he says, you know what, you should figure on taking like a year or more to roll up to a referendum. He thought this spring election would be awfully tight and reduce our chances of success. So that goes again to, let's not do it right now. And I'll say this, I think I've said it before, I'll say it one last time. Let's not forget that as far as we know, no county has done this where we've shifted these types of operating costs over into short-term borrowing. And I don't know what kind of risk that is, but let's just acknowledge that.
Not for capital things, I think, like from highway department, that has been done. It's the court-ordered adult placements and the insurance that has not been done, but we have the legal review from our corporation counsel saying we can do it, but we would be the first, is what you said. Just say it.
As well as review from a TOLUS.
Is that likely to be challenged? Clint?
Not that I'm tracking on. From a local perspective, it would be the taxpayers of Richland County collective
Impossible
following
question.
a suit. So there's no case law out there that is referenced.
Okay, I'll accept a motion.
Mr. Chair, just if I can add one more thing to that,
You
include
may.
that. We're not recommending that those items that are more unusual be employed until 2026. In 2024 and 2025, the amount that's in the highway department budget, we can just focus on that at first. We don't And we asked you all to prioritize that in the survey, and everyone said we're less comfortable with those other two. So that's why it's prioritized like that in the 5-year financial plan.
Okay, someone want to make a motion on the resolution?
I would so move.
Williamson, seconded by Luck. Okay, I don't think we'll have any more discussion, but all those in favor of this resolution from the ad hoc referendum committee signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? A no? Mitchell, a no? Okay, the resolution is adopted. It will be then forwarded to the county board for action at the January, sorry, at the January
17th,
meeting
I
of the
believe.
county board. Okay, thank you. How far down the agenda are we at this point?
I think you have covered your items underneath Director of Resolutions to Ad hoc Committee, unless there's any types of communications that you want to give back towards Ad hoc Committee. We would have that complete, and we'd be moving on to the personnel items then. Mr. Chair, the 2 closed session items.
Yes, we do have on our agenda, we have recommended closed session pursuant Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parent 1, parent E, deliberating and negotiating, purchasing of public property is the investing of public funds or conducting other specified public requests to attach to the WPPA collective bargaining agreement. Then we also have a closed session item, closed session pursuant Wisconsin State Statute, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the body has jurisdiction, performance evaluation, and contract review county administrator. So do I have unanimous consent to go to closed session? Okay.
Aye.
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 Did you have a motion?
All right. We are in
Just-
closed session.
We'll need a motion in a second before
I'll
we, I
make the motion.
don't know if we,
Okay.
there, now we're good.
We got
Thank
it.
you. Okay, and then we have, do we have anybody online? I should, that would make it easy.
Supervisor Turk is online.
There we go. Supervisor Turk is on.
Thank you. Clint, do you recall last year's evaluation process?
Yes.
Are you in agreement that we could proceed in the same manner
Yes, Mr. Chair.
and use the same evaluation form, but then ask you to
Complete the self-evaluation?
do a self-evaluation listing your accomplishments and your plans and
Yes, sir.
okay. If you would do that, then we plan to distribute about the second week.
It would be around the time of our January board meeting.
Yeah, about the time of the January board meeting. And we would have a discussion then in closed session at our February 6th Finance and Personnel meeting.
Or at a later one if the agenda was too big for that one.
That's right. If the agenda is too lengthy, we could call a special meeting.
Understood.
All right. Thank you, thank you. Oh, we have the MOE that we need action on.
So we're looking for a motion to accept, to distribute to WPPA, and
Right.
to also recommend a recommendation to the county board.
So I'll take a motion on that.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Cooey, seconded by
I will.
Mr. Williamson. Okay. And that was the memo of understanding with the WPPA. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And in closing, future agenda items. Does anyone have future agenda items? Way to put you individually on the spot or simply ask? Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Coy. Second by Mr. Gotchell. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.